The ultimatum arrived as a clock. Admiral Mara Cade stood on the flag bridge of the carrier Asterion as the countdown spilled red across the main display. Ultima Compact destroyers ringed Sable Gate like teeth around a wound, their hulls quartz white against the cold blue of the gate's coronasphere. The message was brief: evacuate the convoy's cargo and personnel to Ultima custody within 30 minutes or the ring would fire, and every ship within the exclusion cone would be slag. The air smelled faintly of ozone from overworked projectors, and the deck beneath her boots purred with reactor harmonics. Ultimatum reads at 29 minutes 43 seconds, Commander Sarah Imani said, voice low but steady. Their beam capacitors are warming. Their doctrine sheet is in the packet, same as Orpheon and Nisa. If we move, they shoot. If we hold, they shoot. Vector of least harm, Mara asked, tapping a knuckle on the railing. The metal was warm. The carriers were bleeding heat into space because the radiators were not fully deployed, not with the ring's sensors watching for any thermal butterfly that looked like a firing solution. Negotiate. The fleet mind, said, its voice a weave of chimes and human vowels. Vigil had chosen to speak through the old bridge speaker today instead of the softer bone link, or falsify their measures. They have calibrated to us, Admiral. We must reframe what they think they see. Asterion's lighting dimmed a fraction as the main scopes leaned into the blockade's skin. Mara watched the convoy on a side screen, 57 ships' hulls battered by years of independent routes, stacked with families and seed stock, and the stubborn hope of people who never believed in anyone's boot. The ring's corona hissed faintly through the hull, a living thing far larger than any fleet. Patch me, Mara said. Open line to the doctrine vessel. The speaker clicked. A voice arrived with ceremonial weight, as if reading from a scroll. Asterion, you will comply. Our ledger records your transgressions across 3 engagements. You will surrender your weapons, your command codes, and the convoy. 29 minutes, 4 seconds remaining. Mara's jaw tightened. You've set the stage. Now hear our counter. We'll move the convoy through the ring. You will not fire on ships with no batteries. You will not fire on hospital carriers. We will separate our flags. You want the doctrine, learn from the people you threaten. Your terms are rejected, the voice said without a breath. You are within the arc. Costs are fixed. 28 minutes, 49 seconds. Mara exhaled, feeling the recycled air dry across her tongue. The ring's glare painted a faint sunburn on the glass of the forward blister. She turned to Vigil's emblem on the console, a simple circle with a single unslept eye. We teach or we fight, she murmured. We teach before we fire. The deck vibrated as the Asterion adjusted its mass baffles and bled a little heat to look less like a combatant. Somewhere deep in the keel, coolant hissed through a labyrinth, carrying reactor warmth to the armored radiators like a river that never met air. Mara steadied herself with a palm on the rail and pointed at the convoy diagram. Civilian line first, she said. Imani, send the call. 6 minutes for eyes and hands. The screen poured in faces as if a window had opened on 57 ships at once. A nurse in a stained gray jumpsuit on the freighter, Kind Gossip. A child with hair tied in a blue rag clinging to a bulkhead strap, the cuff of a pressure suit too big for her wrist. A dockhand whose gloves were cut at the thumbs so he could feel the wrench. An old man with a pilot patch from a flight school that no longer existed. A woman whose shoulder tattoo swam with the microgravity drift as she spoke. We're not armed, the woman said, breath fogging the cam lens. We just need the gate. We have a neonatal ward, the nurse added, voice shaking like her ship's worn bearings. They said we have to power down life support to prove we're not hiding weapons. If we do that, we're here to keep you alive, Mara said, and her voice cut through the bridge's hum. You'll see odd signals near your hulls, mirrors and kites. Do not touch them. At T-20, we will send decoy wake signatures. At T-15, keep your lights steady. When we say go, you go. We will take the attention. Will they shoot the child? Asked voice small against the speaker hiss. Not if we can help it, Mara said. And if they do, we'll be in the way. The faces dissolved as links closed to conserve bandwidth. The bridge felt colder. The smell of reheated coffee mingled with the sharper tang of ionizer plates. Mara rolled her shoulders beneath a uniform that had been refit 3 times threadbare, at the cuffs stubborn as she was. Vigil, she said, walk me through the lattice. Passive mirrors, Vigil replied. Slivers of polymer and crystal centimeter thin, neutrally buoyant in the ring's faint exhale. We seed them along their sightlines. They will dutifully count false mouths and phantom heats. We will angle the returns to suggest that Asterion is 3 degrees off her actual vector. The convoy's engines will feed into a scaffolding of ghosts. Lieutenant Jun Park Tactical ran a hand over a panel that shone with console glare. Their doctrine vessel's beam arrays are gimbaled for cone coverage, he said, keeping his voice level. If we present the wrong silhouette, we can get the first 2 salvos to chase shadows. Not much room for error, Chief Elio Bram added from electronic warfare. He smelled faintly of coolant where a line had kissed his sleeve an hour ago. They wrote their ultimatum to punish motion. We will make motion look like stillness. We will make stillness look like us. Do it, Mara said. No heat flares we don't need. Keep the radiators cloaked. And Sarah give me their fuel budget on the big screen. If they wrote this doctrine like the last 2, they priced it to hide their own costs. Learn where the price hides. Asterion's belly bays sighed open like sleeping gills. Kites drifted out discs so thin, they bent with a whisper, spooling thread-thin tethers that quivered in the faint air of the ring's edge. On scopes, they were nothing. Against the compact's precise gaze, they were suggestions, and suggestions could be more dangerous than shells. 26 minutes, Imani said. They're not responding to our channel anymore. Battery temperature's rising. Mara rubbed her thumb against the edge of her command ring. The habit left a faint warmth on the skin, a counter to the bridge's conditioned cool. We don't need their words, she said. We'll talk with geometry. Imani's mouth tugged at the corner, not quite a smile. As you always said. Vigil Mara asked how many lives if we take their first salvo. Varies by angle, Vigil said precise. 17 to 47 on us. 90 to 186 among the convoy depending on shell spread and if the ring's recoil shakes anyone into the rocks. Mara's eyes closed for a heartbeat. When she opened them, the ring's frost-bright glare burned on her retinas like stubborn memory. We need a hole they won't shoot into. Doctrine says they'll spare hospital hulls if marked and cold. How many hulls can we mark in 12 minutes? 11 Park said. We have paint, but the beacons are limited. The rest we fake by cooling and by prayer. Make the prayers practical, Mara said. Start painting. Asterion's shuttle thrummed out with paint drones under their bellies, little insects that carried light. They left a spray on chosen hulls, a pattern the compact had sworn before judges to honor crossbars of blue-white foes that meant children asleep inside. The drones came back with the hiss of docking clamps and the smell of burnt lubricant, the ship breathing deeper as the clock dug another notch. Admiral Bram said softly, I'm hearing a whisper in their carrier wave. Not meant for us. Probably housekeeping traffic. But it's numbered, not named. Let me see it, Mara said. The code spilled across her side screen, a series of integers pulsing at 2-second intervals. Not coordinates. Not authentications. Something else that wanted to be counted. Query Vigil said, voice almost gentle. That numbering is a charge list. They are not merely tallying our behavior. They are itemizing their costs as they come due to justify the shot. Every beam requires a public justification to their system of record. The list is behind which implies they did not expect us to resist, or they expected we would break, Imani said. The deck beneath them trembled as a small tremor ran through the ring, A rumble like distant thunder translated through hull. Mara looked at the red countdown. 24 minutes, she said. We won't break. Split their image. Keep ours whole. The first set of kites drifted into place, tiny flecks adjusting their face with electrostatic whispers. On the board, Asterion acquired a second ghost, and then a third, faint smears in the enemy's search cones that would be real enough at fire time. The convoy's engine signatures were being fed through decoy rails, heat captured by scoops, and bled into the ring's eddies where it could masquerade as ring noise. Civilian vignette feed, Amani said, and at Mara's nod another window bloomed. The camera inside the kind gossip's medbay shook with engine rumble. A nurse, same gray jumpsuit, same tired eyes, ran a hand over the incubator's lid and left sweat streaks that caught the panel light. Beside her, a father cradled a tiny bundle with more wires than skin lips pressed to a forehead behind glass. A mechanic stood by the door with a wrench tucked into his belt like a talisman. A teenager in a patched exosleeve held a cable while biting the inside of her cheek until it bled. A teacher in a ship blue sweater counted heads and then counted again. A cook taped two flimsy boxes together to make a cradle that wouldn't slide in microgravity. A boy drew a circle on the wall with a marker said it was a planet he would visit when the ring stopped growling. The feed folded away. The bridge seemed louder for a moment, the hiss of coolant more insistent, the Velcro rasp of someone adjusting a strap almost obscene in its intimacy. Mara gripped the rail and tasted metal under her tongue. Vigil, she said, I want their ledger on our main. When they justify a shot, I want to see the words. Done, the AI said, and the right side of the screen filled with a strange clarity line items in formal script. The doctrine's bones. The compact paid to punish. They charged themselves to cleanse. They called costs disciplines. The list ticked behind the rhythm, as if someone somewhere had to catch up to the anger. Account for every life you threaten. 21 minutes, Imani said. They're adjusting their cones. They're hunting our ghosts. Let them hunt, Mara said. Elio, send the flutter. Make Asterion breathe in 2 places at once. Bram's hands moved, and the ship answered with micro-adjustments that a human eye would not spot, but doctrine cones would. The carrier seemed to inhale near one ghost and exhale near the other, a living misalignment that made certainty dangerous. Ultima battery temperatures at 92% of firing threshold, Park said. He swallowed. Mara heard it. They're close. Convoy Mara said, opening the line. Make your engines even. Keep your hearts slow. A dozen captains replied with clipped acknowledgments. Beyond their words, Mara heard the creak of old ships bracing against acceleration they could not afford. The clamp hiss of doors pulled tight. The murmur of someone praying in a language Mara did not know. 17 minutes, Imani said. They've lit the beam pre-charge. They will fire the instant they believe motion violates their cone. Mara nodded to a rhythm that was centuries older than the ring they faced. June, line up our decoy rails for the first bright flash. I want them to see a sin we did not commit, Copy Park said. His fingers danced. The console glare painted pale bars on his cheekbones. The smell of ionized dust grew sharper as the ship's EM skin tightened to prepare for the salvo. The hull sang a low cradle hum that steadied Mara's breathing. She could feel vigil in the link now, not just in the speaker, a cool focus sliding against the back of her mind, like a hand finding a hold. Ultima Doctrine, Vessil, Mara said, reopening a one-way line. You're pretending this is law. Law requires witnesses. We're broadcasting your charge list to the convoy. If you fire on hospital marks, we will make that ledger permanent. Your transmission is unauthorized, the ritual voice returned. Any broadcast that interferes with obedience is treason. Law demands evidence, Mara said, not raising her voice. We are sharing what you wrote. Hold your nerve. Make them blink first. 14 minutes, Imani said. Their targeting cones have narrowed. They are bracing for our break. The ring's recoil will shake them. If we go at 13 on the dot, their calibrations will be a hair off. Mara's tongue felt dry. She took a sip of water from the tube clipped under the console and tasted rubber. We move at 13 and 20 seconds, she said. Elio give them a spark at 13:30 that looks like a swarm. June at 13 show a corridor opening where none exists. Admiral Vigil said a shade softer. Probability of compact fire is 81%. Probability of first salvo hitting a mirror rather than hull is 58. Probability of second salvo being withheld because of public ledger friction is 47. Their judges will not want to pay for a hospital mark. Then we make them pay to ignore it, Mara said. Her fingers were steady on the rail. The deck beneath her buzzed a machine, trying to be quiet. Convoy on my mark. The countdown bled toward 13 like a wound deciding to clot. The ring thrummed a resonance that made Mara's forearms prickle under her sleeves. Somewhere behind her, a tech's suit heartbeat blipped too quickly and then calmed. 1320 arrived like a held breath, Gomara said. Engines flared. The convoy moved as a school of fish does when a shadow crosses water, not in panic, but in a shared shift, as if they had agreed on a direction in dreams. Asterion's decoy rails spat a false corridor 3 degrees to port a soft tunnel of blankness in the ring's noisy breath, and the mirrors flared like midges in sunlight, thousands of tiny faces angled to return a lie. The compact fired. White lances crossed the knot corridor, blooming with brutal beauty as they bit reflected ghosts. The ring shuddered. The shock came as a pressure in the feet rather than a sound, a hard thump that jarred teeth and made console edges bite palms. Asterion's bow shields sang high too, near to resonance, then settled into a steady lower whine. Park's hands moved without orders. Bram swore through his teeth and smiled because the first lie had been sweeter than expected. Hit on mirror cluster Echo 5, Imani said. No hulls, no hulls. Second battery warming, Park said. Sweat ran past his ear and was caught by a fabric band designed for that specific sin. They're trying to write a justification now. The ledger line's late. Convoy Mara said, vision narrow. Keep even. Keep the hospital marks in the corridor we made. The kind gossip slid through the false tunnel, its painted crossbars glowing with the ring's light like fresh frost. Behind it, the hauler Tall Mercy ate the Asterion's wake and cut its heat with a cough that shook its frame. It was working, and then something dimmed. Admiral Bram said, voice suddenly flat. I have a spike from starboard. Someone's painting the hospital mark on the wrong side. It reads as a decoy. Can they see that it's ours? Imani asked. They can see only what we show. Then show them a different truth, Mara said. Point the mirage at us, not them. Bram nodded. His hands trembled once and then steadied. The coolant hiss grew a shade harsher, and the air's metallic tang deepened as Asterion took on just a little more heat to cover someone else's fear. The compact's second salvo was late, and when it came crooked. Beams washed across Asterion's bow in a fan that kissed shields and left aurora scars on the hull. 2 mirrors blew apart, their tethers snapping like harp strings. Asterion rocked. Something under the deck coughed a brief shuddering noise like metal remembering a break. Damage, Mara asked, and the bridge waited for Imani's voice like listeners in a chapel. Bow plates scorched, Imani said. Shield grid holding at 83%. Aft radiator 3 is warm but stable. We lost 1 shuttle bay door. It's jammed shut. No casualties reported. We have 1, Bram said quietly, his eyes fixed on a side panel. Drone tech Gallo. Burn on the forearm from a coolant backjet. He's cursing inventively. Send him my curse to add to his list, Mara said. The joke didn't land, but it helped. Balance their fire with our wit. 10 minutes, Imani said. We've moved a third of the convoy through. The ledger column on the right side of the screen hiccuped and then updated. The compact was writing the reason it would give its own judges resistance interference correction. Each word cost them. Vigil colored the entries faintly, a gradient from cheap to ruinous, and Mara found herself rooting for the darker shades. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars, Imani said, as if reading from a manual written before both of them were born. Put that on our broadcast, Mara said, and the phrase ran like a ribbon over the convoy's private channels, a promise and a dare. Admiral Park said their doctrine vessel is shifting vector toward our ghost corridor. They're going to collapse the tunnel. Then we make the tunnel a mouth, Mara said. Vigil, can we invert the lattice, make their cones eat their own reflections? With cost, Vigil said. We will need to light the mirrors hotter. Some will fuse. The crew on Anchor Point Bay will have to vent until the flare passes. Do it! The ship flexed its light. Mirrors flared not with heat, but with sharpened angle, a sudden glitter that made the enemy's sightlines seem to converge on their own comprehension. For a second, that could have been a year if you were holding a baby on the kind gossip. The doctrine vessel seemed to hesitate, its beams a fraction of a fraction off. Go now, Mara said, and 3 more ships slid through their engines low, their lights steady, the painted crosses refusing to be anything but what they were. 7 minutes, Imani said. We are halfway. The ring's skin rippled. The compact's third volley arrived like a hand slapped on a table in anger rather than strategy. And one beam did what anger does. It found something that did not deserve it. The hauler Tall Mercy's port radiators flashed into steam. The ship lurched. For a moment it hung wrong in the false corridor, like a knee that remembered an old fall. Tall Mercy, hold your line, Mara said. We're with you. Asterion bled heat to mask the hauler's wobble, and a lance meant for an unarmed belly's shadow instead licked Asterion's flanks. The carrier shuddered. The lights dimmed to amber. The air temperature climbed 1.5 degrees. Someone on the lower deck yelled a word that would have earned a child a week without dessert. The damaged lights steadied. Port shield sectors down to 62%, Imani said calm. We can hold, Medmara said report. Gallows fine, came the voice from below. We've got a sprain and a cut forehead from that last shake. No hull breach. Reckon with their doctrine in public. Broadcast their ledger, Mara said. Don't shout, just show. On every convoy screen that had a single lumen to spare, the compact's justification scroll rolled past like law shown to children who knew who fed them. Under it, Vigil added a quiet transcript of the hospital oath the compact claimed to honor. An overlay appeared where they had fired close to the mark. 4 minutes, Imani said. We have a choke at the tail. The freighter Sour Fig's captain is scared. The civilian channel opened again without a command. The Sour Fig's captain filled the lens, a woman with a split lip and a wedding ring that looked like it had been filed from a bolt. I can't hold it, she said, breath fast. The corridor's not real. My hands know it's not real. It's as real as your courage, Mara said. Breathe. Steady your wrists on the gimbal. Look at the crossbars on the ship ahead, and imagine you're taking your child to school on a cold day. Doors are heavy. You lift. You keep lifting because someone's inside who doesn't know how to open them yet. The captain swallowed. I don't have kids. Then pretend you do, Mara said, softness sharpening the words into a tool. And that they're proud of you for learning this. The Sour Fig straightened. It moved. It passed the ring's lip with a shiver that clawed gooseflesh up Mara's arms, and then it was through, and the ring's breath took a fraction of its heat like a toll that would not be missed next week. 2 minutes, Imani said. 3 ships left. Asterion can block 1 more volley, and then we must pivot our belly to keep the shield overlap. Do it, Mara said. June, keep the decoys breathing. Elio, make our last mirror bright. An alarm ticked twice on Bram's console, a small sound like a utensil falling politely in a quiet room. He glanced, frowned. Admiral, he said. There's a parasite signal near the tail. Not ours. It's nested in the kind gossip's medical telemetry. It's reflecting our mirror angle back toward their ledger. What does that mean? Imani asked. It means someone is trying to make it look like the convoy is faking hospital marks, Bram said. If the compact believes that their cost to fire drops, their judges won't stop them. Mara's breath felt tight in her chest. The ring's light flickered over her knuckles as her hands clenched. Can you cut it? I can smother it, Bram said. But I can't prove the negative before the shot. Prove the positive, Mara said. Show the compact a face. On it, Bram said, and his fingers moved in a way that looked like mercy. Steady the line. Show them a human. The feed from the kind gossip's medbay filled the corner of the main screen, not with numbers, but with skin, the incubator. The father's mouth trembling, the nurse's cracked lips as she said the baby's name for the microphone. Vigil framed it with the doctrine's clause that demanded marks be honored when lives could be seen. The ledger column pulsed. On the compact side, someone had to sign their name to a line that would outlive today. 1 minute, Imani said, voice a stone in a stream. The compact's doctrine vessel aligned for a final shot that would scythe the corridor. Asterion angled her shield overlap like a shoulder lifted against a blow meant for the face behind it. The hull's vibration deepened, a purr forced to become a growl. Sweat cooled on Mara's neck and then warmed again as the air handlers fought ship heat. Now Mara whispered, and Park fired the last decoy bloom. The doctrine vessel hesitated. The ledger column blinked. Vigil whispered numbers against Mara's thoughts like a song she had known before she could speak. The compact's beam did not fire. 30 seconds, Imani said. 2 ships. Go, Mara said into the convoy line, and 2 voices answered at once, fear and grit married by necessity. Asterion took one last hard kiss on her port flank, as a secondary battery, angry and unadvised, spat light in a tantrum. The shield ate most of it. What it couldn't eat, it learned to taste without swallowing. Asterion's radiator flared and held. A smell like hot metal washed through the bridge, sharp enough to sting the back of Mara's throat. Convoy clear, Imani said. All ships through. We're the last. Then we leave, Mara said. But not blind. Open the corridor. Close the trap. The ring's lip framed the black like a mouth about to speak. Asterion slid toward it, her mirrors shedding like petals now that the wind had changed. Mara watched the ledger column tick once more. The last entry on the compact side was a phrase with a cost more expensive than any beam delay for review. Vigil, Mara said, did you get their charge algorithm? I did, the fleet mind said, almost pleased. They cannot fire without writing their price to their public book. We can make the price visible to their citizens in real time next time. They will hate that. They can bring more guns next time, Park said softly. Guns still need hands to sign, Imani replied. The Asterion crossed the ring's lip into the quieter dark beyond. The vibration eased. The smell of hot metal faded to the ordinary perfume of a ship too busy to scrub every corner. On the med deck, Gallo cursed anew as a medic cleaned his burn and laughed at the same time. Mara let herself breathe for 3 heartbeats before the next decision. Vigil, she said, was that parasite ours? No, Vigil said. Its signature is a mirror of our mirrors. Someone wanted the doctrine to ignore the marks. The source was not compact. It was local to the ring. A relay on the inner skin. Sabotage, Imani said. From who? Unknown, Vigil said. But it was priced. There are numbers embedded in the carrier wave that look like a private invoice. Mara stared at the ring's blue edge. The cold light made the fine scars on her knuckles look like lines on a map that had not been finished. They're not just paying for beams, she said. Someone here is selling reasons to shoot. Admiral Park said, eyes meeting hers, if we can find the relay. We're not done, Mara said. She could feel the decision settle into her bones, with the same gravity that kept the crew from floating off meaning. We saved them. Now we set precedent. Again, Imani asked, but it wasn't cynicism. It was readiness. We flip their trap, Mara said. We show them their own cost. Not with fire, with sight, with a count. The ring hummed like the distant engine in a winter night. The stars beyond it were hard and clean. On the ledger column, the last line from the compact hung open, unclosed, waiting for a signature. Brace for the lesson to cut both ways. Mara rested her forearms on the rail and felt the residual tremor in the metal fade like an exhale. Plot the relay, she said. Nearest tug with a hull that can take ring grit. Maintenance skiff, Pelican, Imani said. Crew of 4. Thick plating, old but angry. Tag here, Captain, Mara said. We need eyes that don't blink. Hold the nerve. Move like a hand under cloth. The Pelican's captain appeared on the side screen, cheeks wind-chapped by recirculators that needed love. A bandana kept his hair from floating into his eyes. The background was a mess of tools secured by old yarn and stubborn faith. You want me to drive into the ring's lungs? He asked, half-grin hiding tired fear. That's a stupid ride. We need confirmation on a relay, Mara said. You'll have a tether and a guide light. Stay on our line. We'll take the heat. Price, he asked, voice as flat as a tool plate. You'll help stop them from shooting at painted marks, Mara said. That's worth more than money. He nodded once. Worth a scar. On the tug's deck, someone rubbed a lucky bolt until it squeaked. A dog with clipped ears, eyes like cold tea, floated gently and stared at the camera. The captain swore under his breath at the dog and called it family. Pelican, Mara said, you're our witness. Then I'll look with both eyes, he said, and killed the link. Asterion turned her thrusters, tasting ring eddies with small puffs you felt through boot soles more than heard. The starboard radiator kept a dull blush that spoke of work done and paid for. The console glare drew slow bars over faces and hands as the ship rolled. Put me on a whisper, Mara said. I want to step into their math before they know I'm in the room. Threading needle, Bram said. Your whisper will ride the ring's own cough. Teach them that sight is a promise, not a threat. The relay was where Vigil had guessed a maintenance blister on the ring's inner skin, disguised as a sensor calibration node. The Pelican clipped a tether. The metal moaned a sound, transmitted through structure rather than air, a whale's voice in a cathedral. The captain's hands were steady. His breath fogged his visor. Seeing a third-party aboard, he said, not compact, private build. Scratches say Jackson Sons, like that's a joke. Can you pull its memory? Bram asked. If I use a wrench, the captain said. And then he did because he had always measured life in things that yielded to hands. The relay's belly opened with a groan. The dog barked once at the new smell like ozone and old plastic. The captain removed a module and held it up. It spun slowly, lights winking, as if surprised to be free. Invoice file, Bram said, eyes narrowing. Encrypted short key, something you'd use if you wanted to get paid at a dock with no questions about blood. Break it, Mara said. Bram broke it. Numbers spilled like spilled coins in a quiet room. The invoices sold justification packages. For a price, you could spoof the ring's mark and drop the cost of firing. The signatures were local syndicate, not compact. Some were dated today. The buyer line item on 2 was an Ultima Comms clerk under an anonymized handle which suggested corruption or carelessness or both. Put the invoices on the crawl, Mara said. No commentary, no drama. Admiral Imani said, if we shame the wrong people, the compact will claim external tampering, not doctrine failure. We'll shame exactly what they fear, Mara said. Prices. Count their excuses, then take them away. The second set piece demanded care that tasted like copper on the tongue. Mara owed the convoy her restraint, but she also owed them a future with fewer ultimatums. The target was a space called Orchard Lane, a broad corridor 3 light minutes long, formed by the ring's geometry and used by the compact for dignified retreats when optics mattered. It was designed as an open door. It made traffic look like respect. We'll turn their honor lane inside out, Park said, eyes bright, because math could be elegant, and he liked when the world admitted it. Civilian check, Imani said. The feed opened on a small station called Lintel. You could see smell instead of scent, In a place like that, oil baked into grates, sock musk, burnt coffee that stained mugs forever. A market ringed the central axis where sellers floated behind nets strung with fruit grown in LED pink. A teacher held a class on tether etiquette, every child's helmet bonnet tied with colored cloth. A cook stirred stew and clipped her ladle to a line between stirs so it wouldn't drift. A welder in a scorched cap pretended not to watch three teenagers flirt while trading repair slug packets for music chips. A drummer tapped on a hull panel at a steady beat, anchoring his neighbor's hands as she sewed Velcro onto a worn sleeve. Mara spoke to Lintel's counsel through a channel that stuttered like an old man's gate. "We are going to make Orchard Lane honest," she said. "You will see things you weren't meant to. You may hear their judges arguing costs. Keep the kids on the inner deck in case the ring coughs." "We've seen worse coughs," a council elder said. Her hair was white and cut short by practical love. "We'll make the kids count canned peaches until they hate peaches. It keeps them busy." "Thank you," Mara said. "We'll keep the heavy sound away. Mirror their door into a window they cannot close." The lattice they would use was not made of glass. It was built of angles anyone could count once you knew where to start. Bram laid out reflector buoys like punctuation marks around Orchard Lane, each a comma that could become a period if you held your breath at the right time. Vigil tuned them with touches too small to feel as if tuning the idea of a string. "Ultima will pursue us into the lane if we look like we are retreating to boast about mercy," Vigil said. "They expect us to honor their stage." "Let's be gracious hosts," Mara said. "We'll offer them a seat at a table they paid for." The doctrine vessel, white as a lie carved to resemble bone, shifted to shadow their vector. Compact escorts took flanking positions that looked righteous on a broadcast. Their beams stayed cold because restraint looked heroic until it didn't. "Public broadcast window opening," Bram said. "We can carry their ledger ticks live to Lintel and any open ear in the local nets. We'll time our ghosts with their numbers so every citizen can see what each shot costs before it is fired." "It will make their judges frantic," Vigil murmured with the mild delight of an archivist discovering a misfiled truth. Frantic judges write careful laws after they wash their hands. The Asterian dimmed her lights not for stealth, but for honesty. You do not need lights to teach in a room where the board is the sky. Heat shimmered from a patch on the starboard spine where the radiator had been slapped earlier. It gave the air a metal toast smell that sat on the back of the tongue. "Begin," Mara said. "Open their stage. Let the numbers speak first." Asterion retreated. She shifted her belly and dipped through Orchard Lane with the posture of a ship that had burned for mercy and now requested politeness. The doctrine vessel followed in a hero's stance. Beam capacitors warmed. The ledger scroll on the right side of Asterion's main flickered lines populating slower now that they were public. "Anchor the buoy," timing Park said. "We need their cones to self-overlap when they count." "Pelican reports relay 2 is cold," Imani said. He smashed it like a spider. The first escalation hit when a compact escort cut a broadcast channel and accused Asterion of falsifying costs. They tried to jam the crawl. Vigil slipped the jamming into the compact's internal feed instead, so their crew saw their own ledger stall with a polite beep and a small apology that somebody had to sign to override. "Escort Battery 1 aims at our stern," Bram said. "They'll claim we broke formation." "Let them claim," Mara said. "Give them a ghost to shoot that looks like a halo." Bram smiled with only one corner of his mouth, because the other had dried blood from when his lip had kissed a panel in the last shake. He lit a ring ghost around Asterion's tail, a faint circle of return that read as sacred to machines that confused small gods for big ones. The escort hesitated because doctrine punished sacrilege when seen. "Primary is getting antsy," Park said. The doctrine vessel fired. Its opening arc traced the lane's edge and became a diagram of pride. The beam walked along the buoy commas and found itself reflected into the lane's ceiling, where a compact drone relay sat like an afterthought. The relay cooked and went dark. The doctrine vessel's ledger required an entry collateral struck. A murmur rippled through their internal net, carried on a maintenance channel. Vigil translated as, "Who signed that line?" "Broadcast that question," Mara said. "Balance the book where everyone can read." The second escalation arrived on a whisper from Lintel Syndicate skiffs, warming drives angry at their invoices on the crawl. They were not compact, but their teeth were hired for that doctrine. 6 skiffs could scratch a hull and chew mirror buoys into confetti. Lintel did not have guns, but it had a drum and a teacher and a council elder tired of peaches. "Station is lifting a brace net," Imani said, half in awe. "They're using cargo webs to corral the skiffs." "Give them a wind," Mara said. Asterion bled reaction mass just enough to push air currents through the station's open mouths. The skiff's owners cursed as their launches drifted sideways like badly thrown hats. The drummer hit harder. The teacher clapped a slow beat. The council elder swore with elegance into a public channel that would be replayed as poetry later. "Doctrine vessel adjusting," Park said. "They're going to light the lane floor and claim we entered a restricted corridor." Bram Mara said, "Make the floor their mirror." On it, he said, and he was. The third escalation belonged to Vigil. The fleet mind could have said nothing and let the math teach. Instead, it took a risk that matched Mara's arc because an AI can learn to be brave by watching hands on rails. Admiral Vigil said privately, into Mara's inner ear, a cool breath against thought. "We can force their ledger to reconcile with ours in real time. It will splice their justification with our witness. If we fail, they will claim we hacked law. If we succeed, they cannot close the book without admitting the price to their own people." "You want it done now," Mara said. It was not a question. "Yes," Vigil said. "We teach by numbers, let them learn." "Do it," Mara said, and felt the commitment harden like weld. "Open their ledger. Lock it to our witness." The merge slipped like silk until it hit the text scar of authority. Then it bit. The doctrine vessel's ledger flickered. Lintel's citizens saw in their market and their classrooms and their stewpots a line that wrote itself collateral risk raised by internal parasite relay. Justification sold on ring. The name of the clerk blinked and then refused to erase. Someone on the doctrine vessel swore the word audit under their breath like an insult and a prayer. "Beam 2, Park said. "They'll try to wash our ghosts with brute light." "Anchor your stance," Mara said. "We'll lean." Asterion leaned. The lane's mirror commas shifted their faces to steer brightness where it would do the least harm and the most truth. A beam hissed across sensors and left a smell like old electronics warmed past comfort. Asterion's left hip, what engineers call the place where the mass feels wrong when pushed, complained. The ship held. On Lintel, a child with a peach can count it aloud anyway, and lost count on purpose to slow time. The drummer changed to a wartime, and then back again, because fear bears rhythm better than silence. The welder welded a little arc that sent fireflies skipping along the station's inner skin. A bowl clinked against a bracket, a crisp sound that felt like courage. "Hold fast. Their stage belongs to the public now." The payoff of the first loop arrived as a soft crisis. The doctrine vessel required by its own rule ethic to account for its diverted power to an internal systems review which cut Beam 3's charge by 9%. 9% was a number that mattered when mirrors turned corridors inside out. Bram slid that 9 across their angles. The beam kissed nothing that breathed. Their reading vigil said a note of wonder in its voice, like a librarian watching a long-closed book open. Their junior judge is arguing that the cost floor has been violated by private purchase. He wants a stay. One judge, Imani said, not mocking, but one. "They will split," Mara said. "When they split, someone has to make the choice that can be seen from far away. Count slow, move quick." The doctrine vessel tried to leave. Orchard Lane did not let it go. Not physically, the ring was not a trap in the old sense, but socially. The merge meant leaving would write a line exit during review. In their culture, that cost more than staying to fight. Their pride was an anchor, and the ledger was the chain. They'll send auxiliaries to cut our buoys, Park said. Let them, Mara said. We seeded something better. Beyond the lane at the system's edge where dust writes its slow script, Vigil had placed long mirrors at distances that felt like promises instead of threats. They were not about deception. They were about sight. When the auxiliaries moved, their engine flares swept across those mirrors and threw their silhouettes tenfold onto the ring's inner skin, where Lintel and every ship could watch. This is not a kill box, Mara said quietly enough that only the bridge heard. This is a courtroom. Learn the shape of justice when it doesn't need teeth. The second loop's reveal came as the invoices traced a name that flinched when spoken lightly. Harbin Coyle, a Port Authority broker who thought numbers were leashes. His signature linked to 3 justification packages, one booked last year for a fire that had killed a man sleeping in a crawl space under a refit rig. Lintel's council elder closed her eyes once, then opened them and asked someone to bring her louder speakers. Broadcast his name, Mara said. Then broadcast the clause about collusion voiding doctrine. You're sure? Imani asked. This is a knife pointed at a neighbor. We will not stab, Mara said. We will hold the knife up so he sees it. The name went out. The drummer set the stick down and used a palm flat to keep time because a hand is warmer than wood when you mean to comfort a child. The skiff owners stopped pretending their fires were innocent and negotiated by glare alone. The teacher brought the class closer to the screen and said carefully, "This is how grown-ups settle accounts without hitting. Reckon without blood when you can." The doctrine vessel's voice returned on the open line, stripped of ceremony. Asterion, it said. You are interfering with an enforcement action. We are witnessing, Mara said. And we are showing you your own costs. Your ledger now speaks to your citizens. If you proceed, you sign. Authority is not a plebiscite, the voice said. But the tone wasn't sure. Behind it, you could hear a hum too high to come from machines. It was the breath of people realizing their names might be written beside a number they would have to explain to children later. Then demonstrate a better law, Mara said. Stand down while you review the parasite invoices. The doctrine vessel did not stand down. It fired beam 4 sideways at a buoy to vent frustration without writing a human cost. It missed on purpose. The ledger marked practice a line with a tiny, silly fee. Lintel laughed not at the doctrine vessel itself, but at the idea that a system could shrug like a boy caught throwing rocks at a river. Brace for their last good choice. Escalation 3 cut deeper. Compact reinforcements dropped from gate shadow like a white orchard blooming from frost. They were not huge ships, but they were enough to fog the math. They carried judge relays. Their purpose was not fire, it was narrative control. They would overwrite the merge. Options, Imani asked. Punch them, Park said, immediately, teeth bared. Show them, Bram countered. Light their transponders on our mirrors, and let everyone read the suffix codes that say who sent them, both Mara said. Hit with light and logic, and we do something else. Something else, Vigil asked. We remove the center. Mara lifted her hand from the rail and let it hover. We don't shoot the doctrine vessel. We ask the junior judge to convene a live review here, in front of the ring, with Lintel and the convoy as observers. The doctrine can't fire while the gavel's in the air. That violates their precious sense of control, Imani said, a fierce joy in her tone. Good, Mara said. Open your hand. Invite them to a better stage. Vigil drafted the invitation with spare grammar and honest numbers. Mara added exactly 8 human words. We will hold the line steady. The junior judge took the call. A tiny window opened on the doctrine vessel's court deck. A woman with short hair and eyes that did not hide in a robe cut practical faced the lens. This is irregular, she said. So is selling excuses to shoot, Mara replied. I can give you proof. I have it, the judge said, glancing off camera. Why are you doing this, Asterion? Because your doctrine punishes motion and calls it virtue, Mara said. Because there are babies behind painted marks. Because we count too. The judge blinked once. Proceed, she said to someone off-screen. Public merge remains. Override denied. The reinforcements' judge relays arrived late to a game whose rules had just been posted on the wall. They tried to close the book. Lintel's drummer laughed and beat time anyway. The station's stew smelled louder now, because fear was a hunger's cousin. Asterian's hull hummed with a sympathetic chord you felt in your molars. Steady the tone. Let the law learn to listen. Payoff 2 landed like a clean weld. The junior judge issued a stay. Beam capacitors spooled down in the doctrine vessel with reluctance that read as heat sighing into coolant. The ledger scroll wrote a line that would echo enforcement postponed for irregular cost provenance. The reinforcements hung useless as white teeth without a jaw. They'll hate you, Park said to the judge through a channel he knew she could hear even if she didn't answer. They'll live, she said dry and cut the feed. Mara let her breath out slowly, the air cool and ship-tinged, as if every lung on Asterion had agreed to exhale together. It wasn't over. It was a doorway. Doorways were where people tripped and where people were helped up. Admiral Bram said our buoy net has a tear. Skiff 4 from the Syndicate broke a line. Their pilot looks drunk on anger. Lintel, Mara asked. The council elder's voice arrived crisp, even through static. We have a fire hose. You're going to squirt them, she said and did. The skiff spun, anger extinguished by the sheer indignity of water. Learn to laugh at violence when it fails. Between acts you clean wounds. Asterion's med reported 9 minor injuries, burns, bruised ribs from harnesses, grabbing hard a chipped tooth that would need a grown-up to remind a pilot he was not ugly. The starboard radiator shimmered visible heat coming off it like a summer road. A tech replaced a fuse and kissed it for luck, grease leaving a crescent on his lip. The third set piece would write the precedent. Mara had Vigil convert the mirror lattice from a deceiver to a register. Every beam chamber within 5 light minutes that spooled over 8% of charge would print its state to the shared field. It was not a hack. It was a mirror held steady in a room where no one could pretend there wasn't a mirror. Ultima will remain hands-off, Vigil said. But their allies will challenge. Let them, Mara said. Before we begin, give me a street. Street, Imani asked. Civilian, Mara said. The feed opened to a corridor on the freighter Little Psalm. It was a narrow tube with grips polished by generations of hands. A violinist played with her feet hooked under a strap bow floating out and down in the station's slow spin. A child drew ship names with a grease pencil along a seam. A medic taped a paper sign above the filter. Drink water. A baker passed hand pies through a net, each wrapped in brown paper that would become toys later. A gardener brushed a leaf with a thumb, watching the way it turned to find a lamp. An old man cracked a joke that made a teenager roll his eyes while smiling. Mara let the music hang in the bridge's recycled air and did not speak until the line had become a part of the ship's hum. Anchor the law to a human room. The register lit. The doctrine vessel's chambers showed as a restful blue spooled down. 3 reinforcements glowed at 5%, then 6. 2 escorts flashed yellow at 9. Lintel's market watched colors change and called them by fruit, because kids learn faster when they get to eat during lessons. Any beam above 10 must write a preliminary justification, Vigil said, voice neutral as clean paper. We have that clause on the crawl. An escort slid into yellow-orange and burped a beam at a buoy to look busy. The ledger wrote, practice again with a tiny fee. The drummer refused to change tempo. The escort captain blushed in front of his crew without a mirror to hide behind. Register picked up something deeper, Bram said. A hidden chamber on the reinforcement cruiser Penance spooling in reserve. It's shielded. The mirror sees heat slosh like soup in a bad kettle. Reveal it, Mara said. High risk, Bram said. Do it, Mara said. He did. The buoy net hummed. The penance's shield read its own skin wrong for one bright second, thinking the beam was already fired and wrote its cost. The ledger screamed in digits, then settled. The junior judge's window came back, not requested, but necessary. Penance, she said, voice like a guillotine wrapped in velvet. Why is your reserve charging during a stay? The penance's commander brought up a procedural defense that tasted of dust. The junior judge did not swallow it. Stand down, she said, and this time the word meant more than power levels. Close the loop, leave the door open. The compact withdrew. Not a rout, not a collapse, but a careful reverse keyed to the register's gaze. They had discovered a cost they could not hide, and a witness they could not silence without becoming something they had always said they were not. Their doctrine was not shattered. It was dented, which hurts pride more deeply. Mara didn't gloat. She sent the Pelican a thank you and a fuel card, and asked after the dog. The dog barked once at the camera and then fell asleep because the ship had stopped vibrating. On Lintel, the council elder told the children they could stop counting peaches and start counting homecomings. The drummer switched to a gentle meter you use for sweeping. Admiral Amani said, "We have a request from the judge. She wants a transcript of our lattice math to append to her opinion." "Give it," Mara said. No secrets. Names redacted only where the syndicate would knife a neighbor. The ring's breath quieted. The station's stew thickened. Asterian's starboard radiator cooled from blush to lukewarm pewter. The ship smelled like metal sweat and a faint hint of cinnamon from someone's pocket ration. Hold the aftermath with clean hands. Mara could have ended there. Instead, she asked Vigil to draft the precedent statement her people needed to hear and the compact needed to read. It was not a victory banner. It was a standard operating procedure that would outlive her name. It fit on a panel you could tape above a filter. "Read it," she said. Vigil read, voice gentle. "In transit theaters where ultimata are issued, all enforcement shall be subject to open register of beam charge and justification. Hospital marks require witness by human eyes when possible, and by uninterrupted medical telemetry when not. Parasite justifications void enforcement authority. Mirrors may be used only to clarify sight, not to blind. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars." "Append that to our public," Mara said. "Send it to the judge," St. Vigil said. "Record the law in a place that smells like work." Weeks passed in hours because ships that have bled heat measure time in cool metal, coming back to touchable. The convoy settled into a corridor beyond the ring, engines, low lights steady. Asterian swung a lazy arc to shadow them, until their shadows belonged to themselves again. The Pelican crew patched the hole where the relay had been with a piece of hull they signed with their initials, because pride is a right-sized thing when earned. Then the last escalation came quiet and sly. Harbin Coyle, the broker, panicked and flushed his accounts into a packet meant for a ship named Quiet Market. The packet scraped the lattice and wrote its own confession without intending to. Bram caught it with 2 fingers and a word that made a junior tech blush. "Admiral Amani said we can take him." "Not with guns," Mara said. "With a balance." Balance Park asked, confused until he wasn't. "A debt call." "We buy his invoices," Mara said. "Then we cancel them publicly." "That will make him a target," Imani said. "Then we wrap him in a witness," Mara said. "Lintel can extradite under the judge's stay. He sees a court instead of a knife. Open your hands. Ask the crowd to carry the weight." The extradition felt like lifting a heavy box with 10 friends. It was awkward, there was a grunt, and someone laughed when a foot caught a strap. Harbin Coyle arrived on Asterian pale, trying to look angry instead of scared. He smelled like stress and expensive soap. He flinched at the sight register's soft glow, and then to his shame relaxed, because light is kinder than the rumors of knives. "You sold reasons to shoot," Mara said, not shouting. "I sold numbers," he said, "because men like him confuse math with morality. That's trade. You'll stand in front of people who can count the children your numbers priced, Mara said. We'll go with you. You won't die in a corridor. You will learn. Learn where your pride ends and other people begin. The hearing convened on Lintel because the judge thought should taste like the place it protects. The market muted of its own will. The drummer took a rest he had earned and listened with hands crossed. The stew simmered low. No one wanted to disturb the room's breath with spoon clinks. Harbin Coyle tried 3 defenses. He failed because the ledger did not care about stories that smell only like fear. The junior judge spoke as if she were counting bolts on a suit you want to keep your sister alive. She wrote the consequence. Ultimatum doctrine is constrained, she said. Any enforcement requires registered witness and shared cost disclosure. Any private reduction of cost voids the action and removes compact authority at that site for a season. Hospital marks are sacred, not because they are paint, but because they carry names. It was law in 2 lines more than a flagship's cannon. Mara felt a knot between her shoulders relax as if a hand had learned to let go. Balance struck, teeth put away. Aftermath wrote itself carefully. Merchant Roots copied the register code. 3 stations asked Vigil for teaching scripts and numbers instead of slogans. The Compact's senior judges issued a cautious memorandum review of ultimatum protocols with public consultation. The doctrine would not vanish, but hedges would grow around it, and their flowers would be faces, not flags. Costamani asked later on the bridge, voice soft enough that the ship would keep the answer. Radiator Repair Park said, 3 days. Drones gone. Gallo's arm will scar like a map line. We lost a day, Bram added, and we taught a week. Mara looked at the ring one last time. Its light painted a cool stripe across her hands. The hull vibrated faintly. A comfort, now a heartbeat you trust. Vigil, Mara said. What did you learn? That restraint can move faster than anger if it has a ledger, Vigil said. That I can want a better law. Mara smiled small. You sound like a person. I sound like a mirror held to a person, Vigil said, honest. Reflect what is worth keeping. Let the rest fall away. The convoy threw a small party at distance lights, blinking in a pattern that made no noise and much meaning. The Little Psalms violinist played again. Someone used a wrench as a bell. The kind gossip's incubator cycled to a healthier color. Mara stood at the forward blister as the celebration washed by like wind chimes in vacuum. The air smelled faintly of warm plastic and lemon cleaner. The console glare left a ladder of light across the floor. We're done, Imani said, not a question, an acknowledgement. We're finished with this, Mara said, not with the next. What if they come back with thicker skin, Park asked. Then we show them a thicker book, Mara said. Count your friends. They outnumber your fears. Vigil brought up a draft of the institutional note that would follow the precedent. It was a simple packet any port could pin to a wall. The title in plain font, Open Register Protocols for Enforcement Theaters. It would spread because it fit. There was space at the bottom for signatures. Mara wrote hers in a hand that did not shake. She considered the words she would leave with her people. A monologue should not be a speech. It should be a map folded once and worn at the creases. She spoke softly, almost smiling eyes on the ring's edge where frost meets star. We are not special because we win. We are special because we insist on being seen while we choose. Everyone can shoot at shadows. Not everyone will count with the lights on. Today we kept a promise that our elders wrote with their hands on rails. We used mirrors to make sight, not to blind. We turned a corridor into a place where a judge could breathe. That's the work. We will do it again without asking to be thanked, and it will cost us, and it will be worth more than it costs. The blockade lights dimmed. The public tally confirmed its last line. The mirror lattice cooled to pewter. Hold the door open and make the ledger sing.